Dr. William Buiter, let me start with you. You know, to us here in India, it increasingly looks like Trump and his cabinet are hell-bent on torching the India-US relationship that has been built painstakingly over the last 3 decades. And to us, Trump's cabinet members sound more and more loony by the day. One day, they call India the Maharaja of tariffs. They accuse India of profiteering from the Ukraine war. Trump says India is a dead economy. As if all that was not bad and insulting enough, now you have White House Trade Advisor Peter Navarro saying the Ukraine war is Modi's war. We're learning new things every day. All this while we thought it was Russia and Putin who had invaded Ukraine, but now we are being re-educated. We're being told, no, it is India that invaded Ukraine. It is Modi's war. I want to ask you, Dr. Buiter, what is going on with Donald Trump and his administration?
Well, the rhetoric is idiotic and quite shameful. To call India a dead economy when it is the fastest growing large economy in the world, to refer to the tariffs as Maharaja tariffs is ethnically insulting, and then to call the war Modi's war is also just nonsense. However, this rhetoric, which I think is very regrettable, should be kept separate from the substance of possible reasons for imposing two tariffs in India. One, a 25% reciprocal tariff, which is a response to India's tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers to trade. And it is a protectionist country historically. And the second is the 25% secondary tariff, the punitive tariff for India having massively increased its purchases of Russian oil. Now, it is completely true that China is still the world's largest importer of Russian oil, and that the EU and the US are still importing significant amounts of goods from Russia. But India is the country that has spectacularly increased its Russian purchases. Europe has cut back and is continuing to try and reduce its dependence on the Russian economy. So the purchases of Russian oil by anybody, including India, supports the Russian war effort. And the Russian invasion of Ukraine is viewed as a major threat to Europe, and also a major threat to world peace. So it is not nonsensical to at least to threaten a tariff to get Indian tariff and non-tariff barriers down, and to also impose punitive tariffs for trade with Russia, although I would favor imposing them also on China.
You know, you say you would favor imposing them on China. Let me tell you what the Democrats in the US House Foreign Affairs Committee have said. They have slammed Trump's 50% tariffs on Indian imports. They say these are hurting Americans, and Trump is sabotaging the India-US relationship. And then they go on to say it's almost like it's not about Ukraine at all. And let me tell you, Dr. Buiter, that there are many in India who strongly agree with that, who believe that it's not about Russia, it's not about Ukraine, it's not about Russian oil, that Donald Trump seems to be driven by personal pique and vendetta and his fragile ego. You know, we all know about how desperately he wants a Nobel Peace Prize. India refuses to nominate him for one. India has refused to give him credit for the ceasefire between India and Pakistan. It seems like Donald Trump has not taken very kindly to any of that. If you look at his attacks and shrill rhetoric against India, it sounds increasingly personal. And, you know, talking about the Ukraine war, like I said, China is the largest buyer of Russian oil in the world. And guess what Trump has been saying about the Chinese? He says, I have a great relationship with China and President Xi Jinping. I'm going to visit China soon. I'm going to invite 600,000 Chinese students into the United States. Therefore, my question to you again is this. Is this really about the Ukraine war? Because nobody in India is buying it anymore, sir. Everybody believes there is much more to it than meets the eye.
25% of the 50% tariff is, I think, about the Ukraine war. This was being thought of, planned, and prepared well before the Indian-Pakistan conflict started, and Trump claimed to have, created peace there, which is something that India denies. Undoubtedly, this has irritated Trump and may account for some of his angry rhetoric. But the substance of the 25% sort of import surcharge because of Ukraine is because India has increased its imports of Russian oil from almost nothing just before the Russian invasion of Ukraine to the second largest global importer of Russian oil. So I do think that the rhetoric undoubtedly may have nothing to do with Ukraine. But the 25% tariff itself, the surcharge, the secondary tariff, is, I think, Ukraine-driven.
You believe it's Ukraine-driven? People in India are very skeptical about it, not only because of the way that Trump has treated India in contrast with his treatment of China, but let's look at some more hardcore facts. Donald Trump rolled out the red carpet for Putin in Alaska recently. And according to recent media reports, during the Ukraine peace talks in Alaska, the Russian and American delegations actually discussed potential energy deals. And Putin himself publicly stated that US-Russia trade has grown by 20% since Trump was re-elected. Therefore, we will have to continue to ask, is this really about the Ukraine war?